Have you ever said, I need to write a book? I have a story to tell. I bet you that story is important to the world. You may think it's a small story, but small stories have huge impact. In today's video, we'll highlight the want, the belief, and the fear again, but we want to concentrate more on the fear of a character. And we're going to also see how fear in our regular life plays a big part of our lives. And they also play a big part of a character's life in a movie. On last week, we covered belief, and we related belief to the electrical system in a vehicle. If you have your electrical board to go out in your car, that means that it's not going to start, it's not going to run the battery, it's not going to run the alternator. All these things crank up the engine. And we stated that the engine of a story is what drives the story. The main character has to want something. So that's the motor that drives the story. The main character has to believe something. And the character has to fear something. This is what makes the character three-dimensional. Just like in our lives, there's always something that comes along that causes us to fear. So we're going to relate fear as a transmission in your vehicle. So if fear is related to the transmission in your car, that means when you have the gear shift, right? Normally in our lives, when we run across fear, our natural inclination is to go back to something familiar or familiar place that we've traveled. And just like in a gear shift in your car, the first step is reverse. Then the next step is neutral, meaning in neutral, just like in our life, you're subject to the environment. If you're up on a hill and you have your car in neutral, that means it's gonna roll according to the environment that it's in. If the hill is forward, then the vehicle will roll forward, but you still could steer it and you still can brake, but you're subject to the elements. So a lot of times we'll go in our lives when we encounter fear, we'll go back to a familiar ground, or we'll just try to put it in neutral and let our environment dictate our moves. And so there's the third step is to put it in drive and move towards a destination. This is why we should discuss fear, because a lot of times when we see things, we see coping mechanisms and we don't realize what they are. And so we've dealt with something in the past, right? Which causes a core wound. So think as a core wound as the transmission fluid. So the transmission causes the car it has the low gear and the high gear. One is for pulling, and when the car is just starting, right? The high gears are for like speed or cruising, right? According to what we run across, the transmission will shift, right? And it utilizes transmission fluid, right? Our core wounds from our past is utilized when we run across things that we fear in our life. So, but the transmission also takes the power from the motor, right? And transfers it to the wheels, which gets the car moving in the direction and then we can steer it, right? So with fear, we have the want, which is the motor. We have the belief, which starts the engine. And we have the transmission that takes the power from the motor, transfers it to the wheels, and gets us moving. But if we put the transmission in the park position, it idles, right? If we put it in reverse, we go backwards. If we put the transmission in neutral, we're subject to the environment. If we put the transmission in drive, we're going towards the desired destination that we had before we even crunk the car up according to what our belief is that we could go to that destination. So, in a practical way, so I was at the barbershop on yesterday, and the guys there were speaking about having like relationship issues and what that would look like. And so one of the guys was like, well, the brother right there wrote a book called Domestic Violence Must Die. And I said, yeah, I wrote that book. We took Domestic Violence Must Die and we used that to write Sounds of the Ambulance, the movie that hadn't been shot yet, but it's just written in movie form at this point. So I was speaking to the young man and he said, well, why is it that when you dating someone and they would just get on your nerves on purpose, and they know they can't overpower you? And so I asked, well, maybe it's just a coping mechanism. Maybe that person is dealing with something, and maybe you can get down to the bottom of it, right? And you just go on and on and on, right? Now somebody just, this is the way they is. They gonna test you this, and that. Okay. But what would be the test? If you would leave them or not? Because sometimes if you fear not being with someone, that is your core problem.